You're ruining my close up. It is the Christmas season, and you know what that means. Peter Jackson has to release a movie.
It's true.
What was the last Peter Jackson movie that came out? I forgot.
Like the one before this one?
No, the one that just came out.
That was the Hobbit movie.
Oh, that's right.
Thorin, you gave a promise.
You brought upon them only ruin and death.
You've won the mountain, is that not enough? Now, we defend it.
No,
I remember hearing that they were going to make him to 5 movies now.
Oh.
Yeah, so.
It's the epilogue or the credits. That's going to be the next
Yeah,
movie.
and
Will be just 3 hours.
it like connects The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings.
Oh.
It follows the story of Bilbo Baggins.
Yeah, I think I liked it more than the last one, Desolation of Smaug. Schmaug.
Okay.
But it's not a bad movie. I enjoyed parts of it. I did really not enjoy other parts of it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember walking out of that theater being like, it's what I expected. And I don't feel the urge to see that movie again.
No.
I'll let you go first, though.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so the first 2 Hobbit movies, like, we didn't love them, right? But I think we both said, like, they're not terrible movies. But they weren't that great or anything.
No.
You know, going into this one, I hoped it would be a little better. And, no, I actually thought it was actually a terrible movie.
You thought it was bad?
That was bad.
Okay.
Like, actively bad.
Okay.
Like, I thought it was just cheesy, had terrible CGI. Like, terrible. Like, I don't even care. I thought the CGI was fucking terrible. Oh, that sounds so harsh. I wasn't in a bad mood or anything watching it. It was just, there was no storyline. It made no sense. It tried so much to be like Lord of the Rings. The dark moments were terrible. Everything was just illogical. It was just, ugh. It had the worst scene of the year in the movie.
Which scene?
Okay, here we go. So I'm watching this movie, I'm like, hey, like, I'm not loving this, but it's like, okay. It started with Smaug, and it kind of pissed me off that he's dead within like 5 minutes. But, you know, whatever. I was like, hey, it starts the movie a little different, some action. But then when Galadriel goes to save Gandalf at Dol Guldur and like Saruman's there and stuff, and that was awkward. Like, it was tough for me to actually sit through that.
Yeah.
Oh my
and what was great about that movie, there's like an obvious bad dummy shot when like Galadriel's carrying what is clearly a foam dummy of Gandalf.
And like every shot of Saruman was from behind because it's like this 25-year-old stunt double. Probably, you know, just, I don't know, I just didn't think it worked. It tried so hard to be like, Lord of the Rings, wink, Lord of the Rings, like, but it doesn't fit in with like the character's knowledge of the ring in the Fellowship of the Ring. Like, I just don't. But just the scene was so bad. It was like a video game.
I can't remember. Did you see it high frame rate?
Yeah, I did.
Okay,
I seen it on TVX, yeah.
I saw it also high frame rate. And that scene did feel like I was watching a video game.
Yeah.
And the whole scene, I was like, you know, Gandalf's subplot had been leading up to that, right?
Yeah.
But what didn't make sense was that the last time we saw Elrond, Sauron, and Galadriel, was there anyone else? No, just those.
Yeah, those three.
Those three.
Yeah.
Was the first movie. I forgot what it's called.
Unexpected Journey. Yeah, Unexpected, yeah.
And the way the White Council scene ended was that they didn't believe Gandalf. Mm-hmm. The only one that kind of believed Gandalf was Galadriel. Yeah. So I felt that there should have been another scene with those characters where they're like, maybe Gandalf's onto something. Yeah. He's been missing or something like that.
But they just show up in this strange, heroic fashion, like...
And they say something like really corny, was like, you should have stayed dead. And
yeah. Like, oh, no. And like the flames, Sauron, and it made no sense.
So I thought some of the action was kind of cool. I mean, Saruman was doing like backflips and really crazy stuff. And you could clearly tell it was a stuntman because Christopher Lee can barely stand these days.
He can't even move, yeah.
But yes, I thought that scene was quite
Like, that was probably, like, I'm not even kidding, like, it was probably my least favorite scene of the year, out of any movie I've watched.
Really?
It drove me fucking crazy.
Because the last line of that scene is, Saruman says, "Leave Sauron to me."
Yeah.
And he, like, just walks off into the distance. And it's like, so for 60 years, Gandalf didn't go up to Saruman and be like, "So what happened?
There, bro?
What actually happened there?"
Yeah,
maybe Saruman was lying. Maybe it was just supposed to be like a subtle tie into Lord of the Rings, and that Saruman goes.
It was.
Yeah, but you know, you'd think Gandalf would have done a little more investigating.
Yeah, no, this movie just didn't really make sense, and I don't know. That scene almost like perfectly summarized everything wrong with the Hobbit movies. Terrible CGI, like just forced characters. Like, you just have characters in it just because they were in Lord of the Rings. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah.
A scene that shouldn't even have existed. You know what I mean? Like, just terrible dialogue too. Like, it was brutal in that scene. It was so awkward, and just awkwardness. Like, I've never watched a movie, honestly. I was awkward this whole movie. Like, you know, like Star Wars Episode 1 or something. You watch it and there's parts where you're like you cringe. I was cringing, man. I was having a bit of a cringe fest with this movie. And it's I wanted to like it so goddamn bad. Like, the only thing that stands out is Bilbo. Martin Freeman is so fucking good as Bilbo, but he's never in the movie.
How many lines did he have in this movie?
Probably 20, if you were to count. Like realistically, yeah.
This was the last move in a master plan. A plan long in the making.
These bats are bred for one purpose. For war.
An orc would charge a dwarf.
Yeah.
They would swing their sword or axe, and that orc would drop. And that would happen over and over and over. And I rewatched Two Towers just the other night.
Yeah.
And a lot of the action in that, you would see like a close up of Aragorn or someone just like fighting under Uruk-hai, and you don't see them necessarily kill them. Mm-hmm. It's just assumed that when they cut away that they do kill them.
Yeah.
But this one was like, they had to show that like every decapitation and every orc dropping, and it really just made the the orcs in this movie just feel like totally useless.
Yeah.
Like the droids from
Star Wars prequels, yeah, totally.
Which really let me down.
And just, I swear there wasn't one close up of an orc in this movie that I was like, oh, that's sweet. Because it was just so much rushed CGI. Like, I couldn't believe the low quality of special effects in this movie. It was actually, like, blowing my mind. It was probably, I thought it was the worst out of all the Hobbit movies. Easily the worst out of all the Lord of the Rings movies. But, like, isn't this Weta Workshop doing the special effects? Or is it just Peter Jackson? Like, he doesn't even care about trying to, like, mix practical and, like, special. It's just, like, 100% special effects. Like, I remember you said, you're like, oh, not a spoiler, but there's a scene with a bird in this movie when they easily probably just got a bird trainer out there, land a bird, get a nice close-up. CGI looks like a fucking cartoon. Just the storyline was so fucking stupid. Like, it
was paper thin.
It's so thin.
Like, it starts, so after Smaug dies, then it becomes that the Lake Town people need to find shelter, so they go to Dale, so that's one plot device. The other one was the dwarves. Like this is like half an hour of the movie. They say the word that Smaug will travel fast. I'm like, I don't know why you know that.
Yeah.
Like, who's gonna be like running around saying Smaug's dead? But anyways, and they know that other people are going to try to claim all the gold for themselves, and that the orcs will want it because it's like the perfect strategic point for the future war to come. Right. Mm-hmm. So, and then that's the plot of the movie. Lake Town people need to find a place to live, and the dwarves need to protect everywhere.
Yeah.
I did like that one scene where he's like he's become very greedy and he wants the Arkenstone, and he thinks like someone is betraying him, and he sees Bilbo and he's like, "What is that?" And then Bilbo's like, "My shirt's coming undone."
My shirt's coming undone, Thorin.
And then they rape each other.
Yeah. That was a weird scene. Yeah.
And then Bilbo, it's not a walnut, it's a acorn.
Oh, yeah.
And then that kind of knocks Thorin out of it, and they have a nice little dialogue scene. That was probably my favorite scene in the movie. But then where that subplot goes with Thorin, where he becomes a mindless warmonger, you hate the guy, And then he goes off and has this elongated, obvious sequence where he's walking on like the floor of gold, and there's all this like weird sound, and
he's having like these. He's like almost half tripping out.
Yeah, he's having this like internal conflict. That goes, am I doing the wrong thing?
Getting like sucked under the gold.
Yeah,
and stuff.
It was really overdone.
It was overdone.
It didn't need to be that long.
With
it was quite
CGI.
Obvious, and the CGI was obvious, and it was
What's
like
with the gold in these movies? It's terrible.
It doesn't look very good,
Keep going.
And I just remember thinking it felt like I was watching like a cartoon or something. It was so obvious, the visual metaphor that he was going through, and that scene really all it needed to be was him like looking upset and then taking off his crown and throwing it away, and then he goes off and apologizes. Didn't need to be a 5-minute sequence of whispers and echoing and cool sound effects, and then the floor swallowing him up. Didn't really care for that.
No.
I also really, really hated how the movie started.
Yeah.
I did not like...
It just kind of like started.
It just
like literally just boom.
It literally just starts. And there's,
It clearly seemed like it started with the end of the last movie, which should have been the end of the last movie.
It should have been.
Yeah.
And the only reason they didn't put in Smaug at the end of the other movie and then just cut it down was because they needed to give the audience a reason to come back.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we see Smaug in the first 10 minutes of this movie.
I think people expected more of a plot with Smaug in this movie, but it doesn't really happen.
It was honestly like... felt like I was watching like part 2 of a TV show or something like that. Like they don't bother to do any sort of, like key incident character setup that they normally try. I know that all the characters and the plot's already set up, but that's not how you start a movie.
Yeah.
It's just throw them in where the movie left off.
Mm-hmm.
That's TV.
Yeah, I know, and it does just straight up seem like it starts with the third act of the last movie. Yeah. It's super weird, yeah.
So then when that climax ends, then it's just like,
what now?
Yeah.
And then they're just like, oh, there's all this gold and there's armies that are coming for it and there's treasure and mean elves.
One of the things that kind of bugged me was the Lord of the Lake Town. Mm-hmm. He gets his comeuppance in this movie. Like he gets strangled by a rope and then he gets crushed by
dead Smaug.
Yes. And I was like, what did he do in the second movie that was so bad that
I know, he was just kind of a dick and didn't have good control. He was greedy.
He was a greedy, selfish guy, but I don't remember him torturing children or anything like that.
Yeah, I know.
Was that really inappropriate?
And then his sidekick or whatever is the comic relief in this movie. Why? Just for comic relief.
That character got a lot of screen time.
It was actually strange how much screen time he had.
I didn't quite understand why they gave him so much screen time.
I'm thinking a lot of reshoots there with that character.
I think
they needed some sort of comic relief because there's not really anything else in the movie that even is attempting to make you smile.
You're right. It was strange. I didn't quite realize why he got so much screen time.
Honestly, this movie felt like fan fiction to me, kind of shitty done fan fiction, man.
Yeah. Leave Sauron to me.
Bilbo is right. You cannot see what you have become. Everything I did for them.
My biggest problem with this movie was I just didn't fucking care about anything.
Anybody. Okay, and then I kind of just quickly said at the beginning, the deaths that were supposed to finally bring a dark tone to these movies where shit gets real. They just weren't very good. Honestly, the way I read it in the books is cooler and more interesting for the characters than what happens here. Defending, what's his face, Thorne's dead body is what happens, and they get killed, and all three of them get killed. And then doesn't the bear guy kill Azog or whoever he's actually called in the books?
In the book, it was Bolg.
Bolg, yeah.
He was leading the forces in the Battle of Five Armies, and because that's why he has the bear claws, because there's a history of those orcs killing off the shapeshifters or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
And that was going to be the wrap up to Beorn's arc, is that he kills Bolg.
Yeah, but no.
We see Beorn for about 10 seconds.
Yeah, and
it's literally
if that, man, if 10 seconds.
So it's why do they bother spending 10 minutes in the last movie setting up his character if we see him for 10 seconds?
Drop off an eagle and turn into a bear and go rah.
Yeah,
and then that's it,
that's
bro.
It.
And almost the same thing with the brown wizard guy, Radagast or whatever. Just
it's almost
that was weird though.
They spent about 15 minutes with that character in the first movie. about 2 minutes with that character in the last one, and less, again, 5 to 10 seconds in this movie. It's almost like they were like, let's just cut our losses and we'll just throw it in there because it has to be in there, and then we'll just end it. And that's more or less what happened. Like, they spent so much time in the first movie trying to set up 13 dwarves, and they pretty much failed.
Okay, that's another... Yeah, keep going.
And in the second movie, they gave less screen time to all the dwarves, and they cut it down to like, we'll pepper in a little bit of this dwarf and a little bit of that dwarf and a little bit of this dwarf. But in this one, none of the dwarves get a line other than Thorin, Dwalin, Balin,
Fili and Kili.
And Fili and Kili. Yeah, it's almost like Peter Jackson was like, we screwed up trying to characterize 13 dwarves. Let's just cut it down to 5 this movie.
Yeah. And, like, it's weird, though. It's like you already have 2 movies that he, like, basically padded with all this, like, extra stuff that didn't matter. And then it's like in this one, he abandoned all that, like all the closure for that, like, extra stuff he threw in the first 2 movies and was just like, I'm just going to focus on action and, like, the main storyline, that's it. And even the dwarf that they talk about throughout the first 2 movies, Dane, when he shows up, he's just supposed to be, like, this funny, like, drunk Irish guy or something, you know? Like,
yeah, they really put an emphasis on that character, and I think because he's the one who takes the throne of Erebor.
Yeah.
In Tolkien lore.
Yeah.
After Thorin dies, but they don't bother showing that. So again, why did they bother setting up that character?
There's not even like a funeral scene for Thorin or Fili and Kili. It's weird, actually.
But how about Dane being CGI? Did you notice that?
He was CGI, eh?
Yeah.
Well, that was probably the best CGI in the movie. There were shots I noticed, but his character was like completely CGI.
As far as I know, he was totally CGI. I heard that he's they were able to shoot some of Billy Connolly's scenes, but the guy has since like come down with cancer and Parkinson's, I think.
Oh yeah, and he was originally Dane. That's right.
And so they used his voice, but that's a CGI character for the most part, and I thought it was pretty obvious sometimes. And I didn't like how he's going into battle without a helmet, and he's literally headbutting guys with helmets in the face, and they're not like
it's
falling
supposed
down
to be
the
like
ground.
funny.
And I'm like, you don't have to be a genius to figure out if you headbutt someone with no helmet and they're wearing a helmet, you lose.
It's just stupid. Like,
on top of like, ridiculous action. Like there's a moment where Thranduil, Lee Pace, the Elven King,
who does a decent job at playing Thranduil.
He does a fine job.
But the character's kind of meh.
Yeah. He's riding his elk thing, moose elk thing, and it picks up like 5 orcs on its rack, and with one sweep of his sword, he decapitates all 5 in a row. And I was like, well, you've literally just pushed it too far. I mean, now decapitations have no meaning whatsoever.
Yeah.
Legolas does some crazy
Yeah, like
shit.
that's what I want to talk about. His character was terrible. Like it's really too bad because in Lord of the Rings he is a legitimately like cool character, but in these movies he's just. I said it for the last one too. He's just so stupid and irritating, and he's like this weird like around every corner like watching people creepy character.
He does that again this movie.
Oh man, that's all he does. That's all he does in these flicks.
He's an asshole in these movies compared to Legolas in Lord of the Rings. I did like how they gave him a scene where he just like sets himself up on top of like a tower, and he's just acting like a sniper with his arrows. It's like, okay, that is
more in line with his character.
Yes, that is more in line with what Legolas should be able to do.
Yeah.
Swinging down spider webs and killing things instantly and what is it, like defying gravity by hopping on stones in free fall. And that is not what Legolas should be able to do.
No, and there's that part too where he like takes a sword and he throws it and kills the orc that's about to kill Thorin, right? Yeah. Okay, which is like, it's kind of cool, whatever, Legolas could do that. But, like, you know how it's like an internal struggle? He's like thinking about if he should save him or not, and then he does? Yeah. Like, why does he hate dwarves so much in Lord of the Rings then?
What can anyone do? I will not hide while others fight our battles for us!
Yeah, and I thought, like, there would be this scene where, fucking Toriel or whatever is defending whichever one, Fili or Kili there, and that she would get killed, and then Legolas would be like, oh no, the love of my life got killed because she loved a dwarf. And then it would explain why he hates them so much.
I thought for sure I see what you mean.
But they don't even do that, and it fucking pissed me off. It's like, And the Radcast thing, you spend 2 movies, like, and anyone who's seen The Lord of the Rings and, like, actually, like, likes it or loves it would notice, like, Gandalf has, like, this staff we've never seen before, and the staff Radagast has essentially the one that he has in Fellowship. What the hell? And, like, we think that there's going to be some sort of, like, payoff or, like, resolution to, like, them showing that in this, but there's nothing.
See, I thought, because there was leaked photos of what looked like Radagast, like a Radagast death scene, and Gandalf with him. And we also see that, like, Gandalf is riding a different horse in The Hobbit, which I think was supposed to have come from Radagast. So basically, oh, and also in Desolation of Smaug, when Gandalf is going into Dol Guldur, and he says to Radagast, whatever you do, don't come help me, no matter what.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this is setting up that Radagast is going to go help him when he's in trouble, and he's probably going to die to save him.
Yeah.
And they don't do that.
No.
It's almost like they're like, we can't make this fit into the 3rd movie, so let's just forget that Radagast dies, and we'll just put him in the movie flying on an eagle for 10 seconds.
Yeah. And coming to kind of half save the day.
I could be wrong. Maybe that was their intent from day one.
Yeah.
But it seems like instead of having a solid script to go with, they were just like, we have half of a script to go with, and let's just kind of like throw some pepper and a few things on it and try to make it work, and we'll change this and change that. And then as a result, you really lose a solid storyline.
Yeah. No, you're completely
and,
right.
Finishing some character arcs and paying off some things that you set up.
Yeah.
And you lose all that.
Which is weird. It's almost like the studio or Peter Jackson knew that people were getting fed up of these like 2.5 to 3 hour run times for these movies. So he's like, I got to keep this one short. And he was just like cutting out stuff that would totally like resolve things that were happening in the first few movies.
And this is a line straight out of Episode 1. And I'm really not trying to compare these movies to the Star Wars prequels, but when they see like dozens of goblins charging them, and Thorin and Dwalin go, it's something along the lines of like, only looks like 100 or so, and like, oh, okay, if it's only 100 goblins, then it can't be a big deal, right? We'll just kill them all.
Yeah, we're good.
Like, thanks for killing all the tension.
Yeah, I know. Like, yeah, what the fuck? I know. I remember that scene too, and it's like, oh, it's just a couple hundred.
Because that line is like in Episode 1 when Qui-Gon Jinn sees like these droids, and they're like, there's too many, sir. He's like, won't be a problem.
Yeah.
Fuck off.
But no, man, it's a valid comparison comparing the Hobbit trilogy to the prequels, the Star Wars prequels. They're not as bad. They're really not.
No.
But in comparison to what came before them,
and then some of the flaws they have now,
it's getting there.
When I rewatched The Two Towers, I was watching like this elongated the Helm's Deep battle sequence. There's moments where like when like the horse charge or charging the Uruk-hai at the end, and the Uruk-hai like are like charging, and there's like all this cool sound, and it's all these practical Uruk-hai, the men in suits and in real armor, and they all put down their pikes, and there's this nice cool close up of a pike going into the shot, and I think they even do like a rack from one pike to another.
Yeah.
And it's all real, and you can tell.
Yeah,
and there's no shit like that in this one. There's no cool close-ups and
even what I was saying, man, it looked so stupid. Like when, like Thranduil would be on his moose or whatever the hell that is, and he'd just like cut an orc down or something, and it's just like this terrible green screen shot where this like weird like sky replacements they do behind his head and stuff, and it just looks.
Last thing I wanted to bring up on this movie was the ending.
Yeah.
So.
But the last shot was cool, but.
Oh, right, yeah. So Bilbo goes back to the Shire.
Yeah.
And when he gets there, and I don't think this was in the book, they've assumed that he's dead and they're auctioning off.
The Sackville Baggins.
Yeah, like, they're auctioning off all his stuff, and I was like, oh. I didn't like how they threw in the Sackville Baggins reference. And it's like, you didn't need that.
And in the movie The Fellowship of the Ring, don't they only really talk about the Sackville Baggins in the extended cut of the Fellowship?
Yes.
So it's like, why even really reference them? You know what I mean?
It's because they're in the books.
Yeah.
And I think he just wanted to like keep throwing winks at the books. But again, I know some people complain that Return of the King needed to wrap up its third act quicker.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way about this one.
Yeah.
Like I didn't get the point of having the. I think it was supposed to be like the auction off all his belongings. I think it was supposed to be like, so what you feel that when he gets home,
it's like
he's lost in something.
Yeah, it's like a new beginning. Yeah.
But that. I don't know. I feel like you should have felt that from his journey. You don't need to see his house empty to go, oh, he's lost something.
Yeah.
I did like how he finds his handkerchief.
Yeah.
And because they set that up in the first movie where he's like, I've lost my handkerchief. Where's my handkerchief? And then he finds it on the floor, and you're like, oh, that's kind of nice. That to me was more significant than the auction.
Yeah.
And I didn't mind. I was worried because they end the movie. They do the bookend thing, very similar to the beginning of the first Hobbit movie, which is that it's old Bilbo sitting down, and there's a knock at the door, and there's the same dialogue from the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, how long are they gonna go with this?
Yeah.
And I was worried that I was like, I hope they don't go too far with this.
It's like 10 minutes later, you're watching the Fellowship. What's going on? The biggest problem we've said probably with the other ones was that these movies are called The Hobbit, yet Bilbo's barely in them.
Yeah.
And he's the best part of them. It's like Bard, though. Like, he kills the dragon, and then he's supposed to still be a significant character, but he doesn't really have anything to do.
No, he saves his kids from a troll, and that's it.
Other than failing at trying to convince Thorin to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, the acting in these movies, like, it's decent. But it's just, like, the roles these actors are given are just so hollow, and, like, I don't even think they really knew what they were doing when they were shooting. Like, I remember you, like, pulled a quote out from Richard Armitage or whatever, talking about, like, he doesn't even know what's going on.
It's in the
basically.
special features. I think it's in the first movies, like, it's super awesome special features. And it was something along the lines of, he says, I don't know where this character is going necessarily, but I have faith in Peter Jackson to guide me there.
Yeah.
And I was like, how do you not know, like, or the script's not finished?
Yeah.
Like, does Peter Jackson not even know yet? Like,
it's the biggest problem with his movies. They were basically put together in post-production.
Yeah.
Like, everything about them.
I honestly think that they probably only had, like, 20 minutes of finished footage for this movie.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we'll do some reshoots and a bunch of elongated CGI sequences.
Yeah.
Which there are a lot
Oh,
of.
God, there's a lot. And, like, what did you think about, like, what's supposed to be the epic showdown between Azog and Thorin? Just Thorin could have just got off the ice. Like, just get off the ice, bro.
I didn't mind that. I thought it was too long.
Yeah.
I really didn't like how Azog was able to break up, like, jump through the ice.
Yeah.
I was like, imagine you're in a lake, and imagine there's no ice.
Yeah.
And you try to jump out of the lake.
I know.
It's impossible.
It's just not.
And he somehow does it, and I was like, he broke physics.
I really like the concept of the scene. It was, like, cool on ice, and it's, like, breaking, and they're fighting. He gets under the ice. He thinks he's got him. I like the idea of the image of, like,
his dead body
floating through. I thought it was cool. But then it's just like Thorin, every scene they have the opportunity to make him seem like wise or smart. He's just stupid. Yeah. Like, and Aragorn would have never stayed on that ice, straight up. Yeah. The guy would have been under it, he would have jumped off.
You have but one question to answer. How shall this day end?
There's just no story to grasp onto, and it's just unfortunate. That one scene, though, when it's, like, real Bolg for, like, 3 seconds.
Oh, yeah.